Good morning, friends. I hope you have been listening to the series of lectures on soft skills till now. And this lecture, which is entitled Applied Grammar, is going to be the last and the final lecture. Now, you might be thinking, why this last lecture on applied grammar? Does it mean that you do not know grammar? No, my dear friends. When we talk about grammar, all of us know grammar. Many of us actually are better grammarians than many of us, but when it comes to knowing grammar, what is of utmost importance is to see the application of grammar in our language. Now, whenever we talk about the word grammar, what does it stand for? It actually stands for rules, grammatical rules. And then not only the grammatical rules, but also the notions of correctness, how correct we are, notions of correctness. And when we talk about all these things, we at times find that there are situations when we actually, because we have been communicating day in and day out, speaking, writing, and then there are certain occasions where we feel ourselves a bit confused. It does not mean that we do not know grammar, but actually it so happens that because of our overuse, and in today's world of advertisement, in today's world of digital media and many others, at times grammar seems to be out of control, out of our control, and we commit silly mistakes. That is why this last lecture is a humble attempt to throw some light on certain parts of grammar where we at times feel shaky. This does not mean that I am going to teach you grammar through this course, but I am simply trying to throw some light on our notions of correctness. We are, most of us, good speakers, but when it comes to writing, when it comes to checking our correctness, we feel that in the deluge of grammatical rules, we often crisscross. It is very difficult to say everything about grammar or discuss all the rules of grammar just in one lecture, but then I'll throw some light on certain things which will in a way sensitize you and also many of us. These are some major items which we shall be touching upon in a very quick manner, as when we find ourselves to be at a razor's edge when it comes to proper uses. Now, in order to see how we use, let us look at these sentences, and you will find that even though the sentence means, even though meaning is there in the sentence, but when we come to check the correctness level, we will find that something is wrong. See the first sentence, I congratulate you for your success in UPSC examinations. My student is a SDO. Where is your particular? Diabetes kill people silently. The secretary and principal are on leave. The man who is clad in jeans are my neighbor. Now, if you take the rules of grammar and if you start examining these sentences, all these sentences do not conform to the correctness of grammar. I mean, grammatically these sentences are incorrect and they are suffering from one problem or the other, which actually demands a sort of notion about the standards and the correctness of grammar. In some sentences we have the problem of verbs, in some sentences we have the problem of prepositions, in some we have the problem of plural, in some sentences there is no sequence, there is no concord, and in some once again we find the subject does not go with the verb. The basic rule all of you might have been learning since your childhood is, I mean the very first rule, that the verb must agree with its subject in number and person. But then there are many words which appear as if they can be used as plurals or sometimes as singular, but when we use verbs we are also confused at times. Say for example the use of nouns. Noun, as you know, is a naming word. Whatever name, whether the name of an object, of a person, of an instrument or whatsoever, is a noun. But words such as clothes, police, these words will always be used as plural. That is why when we hear somebody saying the police is coming, if we are sensitive according to the grammar, that becomes incorrect, because the word police is always plural and we should say the police are coming. Where are my clothes? You cannot say where is my cloth. So when you say cloth, it can have any cloth, isn't it? It can have a piece of cloth, fine. So when you say clothes, you are actually referring to your dress. Again, when we see the names of certain tools, instruments, in many of the cases they are always plural, and the basic rule of grammar is, in order to make a singular into plural you add s or es. But when people start feeling that they are only one word and they can be treated as singular, they are perhaps in the wrong. So we should always say binoculars, that is always, you know, that is always in the plural. Scissors, spectacles, glasses, you cannot say where is my glass. If you say where is my glass, that may also mean, I mean the glass by which you can drink. So whenever we talk about spectacles, that is also always in plural, glasses always plural, scales always plural, some dresses such as breeches, pants, jeans, pyjamas, trousers, they are always plural, and you will find at times people actually fail to understand and they write trouser. Again you also might have heard people saying child is a singular, and you know the plural is children, but many people even do not understand the fact that children itself is plural and they write children's. They perhaps forget that the singular is child and the plural is children, fine. When we talk about something being plural, it actually will have s or es, but in certain cases, for example, child, children, fine. So, children, an old time use is brother, brethren, nowadays brothers also being used. Now, words ending in s may take singular verb, but again there are certain exceptions. For example, when you say news, it also has got s, but then it is not plural, fine. So, news which looks like plural, but it is not plural, it is always singular. That is why we often say no news is good news. I haven't received any news from them. Again, you will find that people often use the word politics. Politics, it also has s, and sometimes you cannot, you must not believe that since it is s ending in s, politics ending in s, it should be plural. No, politics is an interesting game for leaders. So, politics, again many subjects you will find, mathematics, physics, fine. So, all these, astrophysics, so all these they look like plural, but they are actually singular. So, sometimes these words, even though they end in s, word like say diabetes, diabetes, it also ends in s, mumps, it also ends in s, fine, but then they are all singular. So, refer to one sentence in one of the slides, diabetes. So, diabetes kills people, we cannot say diabetes kill people, isn't it? Mumps, mumps is a disease again. So, there are many words which may end in s, but they should be treated as singular. Now comes, we should also have some focus on capitalization, which is very important. And in an age where we are very fast, and when we communicate, we actually at times forget grammar. So, and at times we are not properly prepared to use capitalization. So, there are some basic things which we should understand. You see, whenever we talk about some titles, mainly the titles of people, even your surname is always written with a capital letter. Doctor is written with a capital letter, professor written with a capital, it starts with capital. And again, if you have your surname, for example, you can say Professor Mishra, Professor Sanyal, Professor Chakrabarti. So, both Professor and Chakrabarti, the first letter will be written in capitals. Again, some government posts, for example, Prime Minister, President, they'll start with a capital letter. Vice Chairman, they'll start with a capital letter. But at times when this title, this designation, before this designation, if you put the name of some person, the name of the person will be in capital, but the designation will be in small letter. For example, we can say, you can have a look here, Piyush Pant or Pratyush Pant, director of the Ansul Enterprises. See, Ansul Enterprises is written in capital because it is the name of an organization, but then Mr. Pratyush Pant, who is the director, his name is written in capital, but the designation will be written in small. Capitalization should be avoided when the title is followed by an appositive. Appositive is one which comes before. For example, only one professor, and then the name follows. So, either the name comes in the beginning or name comes later, but if there is something which is as an appositive or something which comes after, so in such cases the designation will be in small letters. This has to be remembered, my dear friend. Only one professor, Jonathan Reeves, objected to the new syllabus. Now see here, only one professor, even though professor is a designation, but since the name of the person has come, so the designation will be written in small letters. If a person's name is not there, suppose a person's name is not there and the subject begins with the designation alone, and then it replaces a person's name, again it will be in small letter. For example, the sentence here, the director and the finance manager, the director and the finance manager. Here you cannot write the director, fine, like this you cannot write the director, but then this can be written only when you are writing it as the address, the director IIT Roorkee. So here we can write the capital, but when you are simply writing a sentence and the name is not there, so in complete sentence we can say the director and the deputy director and the deputy director. Again in both the situations you will find deputy director. So in both these situations you will find that it is not written with it is not written with the capital letter. So this has to be taken into consideration. Again capitalization should be avoided with titles having possessive pronoun. For example, when you say my supervisor, suppose sentence begins with this, so naturally here it will be capital. This is capital because the sentence begins with a capital letter, but here this supervisor is written in small. So these are very small instances, but then we have to be very careful about all these nuances of correctness. Your brother, his guide, again in both these situations you find the guide and the brother they are written in small ones. The names of departments, institutions, no, all these will be in capitals. The names of the departments, division or committees within the organizations even will also be. For example, I am delivering a lecture from ET cell, isn't it? Now ET cell is a part of this institute. So when I talk about in my sentence, I will write ET cell, educational technology cell. I am delivering this lecture from educational technology cell. Now educational technology cell, it is actually a department within the institute, and that is why it will be written in capital. Here are some examples you can have a look at. Dell has instructed its quality control unit. This quality control unit is a part of an organization to concentrate on adding some new features in its laptop. Again look at the second sentence. He had sent a fresh request for compensation to the firm's personnel department. Here you know the personnel department is written in small, but then this personnel department should be written in capital. I have put it very willingly just in order to test your knowledge. You see the last sentence, Nokia has introduced new plans in its corporate social responsibility unit. That is again a part of, that is a smaller part of a bigger institution, that is why it has been capitalized. Now most of the time you will find that people often commit mistakes when it comes to giving apostrophe. Now apostrophe, let us try to understand what is an apostrophe. Apostrophe has so many meanings. Apostrophe actually shows the relationship, and you put apostrophe. For example, you can say one's own, isn't it? Now here is apostrophe, one's own, and you know at times it so happens that people commit mistakes. And one major mistake that you often come across when we have seen people writing yours and then there also they give apostrophe. This is actually a blunder, my dear friend. So please control it. So this will not take apostrophe. Yours faithfully, sincerely. But we have seen majority of people, you know, they are putting apostrophe after yours. Okay, it is fine when you say this book is yours, this book is yours, isn't it? This book is yours. Now here you are actually trying to establish a sort of relationship. So when we talk about apostrophe, please see that for example when you say 1 year's time, 2 years time, sometimes you say all the women's associations have welcomed the new regulations on crime control. Women's. So apostrophe has been given, but sometimes there are some words which actually begins with S, and in such a situation when you put apostrophe you are under the impression that it already has S, but no, if the name ends in, for example, James's book, isn't it? So now this can be written in both ways, James and James's book also. We can also say Keats's poetry, or we can also say Keats's poetry, like this. In this both of them are correct. So apostrophe is to be used in order to show the ownership, but sometimes this apostrophe also can be used when a word ends with S sound. Examples are already given if you concentrate on these slides. Students' views, girls' hostel, if you want girls to be plural, girls' hostel, put an apostrophe, girls' hostel, judge's verdict, or the verdict of the judges. That is actually the meaning, the verdict of the judges. Now something of utmost importance is subject verb agreement. You will find the problem arises especially in longer sentences where you will find you are not able to trace the subject, and that is why when you put the verb which is at a later which is in the later part of the sentence, you have a lot of confusion, and then there is raised the problem of disagreement between the subject and the verb. Even in your day to day life also you will find if there is no agreement between the two people, they cannot walk together, isn't it? So in sentences, in language, there has to be an agreement between the subject and the verbs. For example, and you will find there are different category of subjects. Any subject may begin with a personal noun, sometimes the subject may begin with a preposition, sometimes it may begin with an adverb, so sometimes with some other things, sometimes with a phrase, sometimes with a clause, isn't it? Now in such situations you have to be very particular about the use of concord and which is called agreement. For example, none of these managers have submitted their reports. Now take this word none of. Again this none of, when your subject starts with none of, the verb will always be plural, because after none of you have managers which is plural. But sometimes when you are also trying to point out to one only, for example, I have been waiting for students but none of them has come. Now here there is a change in meaning, none of them has come, meaning is not even one of them has come. So you have to be very particular about these. There are many sentences which actually begins with either or, neither nor, fine, or nor, fine, each, either or, neither nor, each, everyone, like this. So when singular subjects are joined by either or, neither nor, the verb that will come will be singular. For example, either the works manager or shift in charge. Now here you see the works manager or shift in charge, both are singular, and this is joined by either or. So the verb here is singular, has to take the responsibility. But remember, sometimes where the first subject is different and the second subject is different, meaning thereby both the subjects are not of the same number, in such a situation the verb will agree with the subject which is nearest. When the subjects, when subjects differ in number and person, number and person. So in such a situation, for example, if you say either he or I to blame, now what will be there? Now here this is a subject, this is a subject. Now which is the nearest subject? I. So the verb will be according to the nearest subject. So I will say am. Either he or I am to be blamed. Either he or I am to be blamed. Isn't it? Now you can have another sentence, neither the doctor, now doctor is a singular, nor the nurses were seen on the accident site. So this is how, when you have a different subject and the subjects are joined by either or, neither nor, the verb will agree with the subject which is nearest. When the subject begins with each of, either of, neither of, the verb will take the form required by third person singular. For example, each of these policies, I mean here it changes, policies is plural, but since the subject begins with each of, the verb will be singular, has its own limitations. Sometimes the sentences will begin with a great deal of, a good deal of, fine. The verb will agree with the object of the preposition of. For example, a great deal of money has been spent on this bridge. Most of the students, so after of, students, that is plural, feel nervous the night before their examination. Fine. So there has to be an agreement between the subject and the verb, and the rules of the agreement will also vary. Next is, sometimes your subjects will begin with a pronoun and the pronoun will be an indefinite pronoun. For example, anybody, nobody, each, either, every, everyone. Here you do not know, I mean there is no specificity, and that is why it is an indefinite pronoun. In such a situation, verb will always be singular. For example, each of the employees has to follow official norms. Everyone in both offices was recommended for an escalation or for a promotion. Now another important thing that most of us are often facing problems is the use of articles, and especially the students of science, they most of the time, they actually sometimes they out of frustration say, you English people have got lots of articles, isn't it? So in our case, the articles are a, an and the, and the simple rule you should follow and you will never be unhappy. And that simple rule is that if the word is, I mean it is not only by word only, if the word is, suppose if I say an apple, that's fine, an apple. Now how do you know, why should an apple have an, isn't it? Actually the word has to be pronounced, and when you pronounce, if the sound is of a vowel, it will take an. If the sound is of a consonant, it will take a. For example, if you remember the first slide, I had said SDO. SDO. Now you pronounce this word SDO. So when you pronounce this word SDO, the first sound that comes is A, and that is why it should be NSDO. But when it's complete, for example, superintendent, the sound is a consonant, sa, that is why it will either take the or a, and between the and a also you have to understand that when it is related to some specific object, then you must use the, or if it talks about somebody, for example, if I say, we can always say a manager, I met a manager. But when you are specifying the manager of this, naturally you are specifying. But remember, there are certain things where definite articles will be used. For example, the names of places, important places especially in terms of the rivers, the mountains. We often say the Ganges, the Yamuna, the names of great books, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Bible, the Gita, the Vedas, fine. When you talk about newspapers, you must always use the Times of India, the Telegraph, the Hindu, fine, the Economic Times, like that, fine. Now, but sometimes you will find when we use the and we have a sort of specification. For example, we say the rich are blessed. Now why the rich? So this rich there denotes a sort of class of rich people, so that is always taken in as plural. So the rich are. Now let us have a quote by Dr. Johnson where he says, "Let me smile with the wise and feed with the rich." So smile with the wise. So when he says the wise, he doesn't mean one person, but actually he means a class of wise people, and again with the rich. So that is why the definite article the has been used. My brother is a university professor. University. Here we cannot say because as in general we feel that this is a vowel, but no, when we pronounce it, it is a consonant. The university, a university professor, isn't it, like this? Again you can take another example, beauty. Now beauty again can be a noun, beauty can be a virtue, beauty at times can be a quality. Beauty without virtue is a flower without perfume. You will find that whenever we communicate, my dear friends, either in the form of a communication or in a form of discussion, you may at times want other people to confirm, and in order to confirm you are using something extra which we call question tag, and people also at times create problems in the use of these tags, because these tags are used either as affirmative or negative. But remember, you actually want to have a sort of affirmation from the other party with whom you are talking, and that is why you use tags. But times are there. For example, people are happy. Suppose we say people are happy. If I ask you, people are happy, and after this there will be a tag. If I say you are all enjoying my course, you are all, suppose I use the word you are all enjoying my course, but now enjoying my course, and I want to have a sort of confirmation. In such a situation I have to use a tag. Now remember one thing, and you will be very happy, my dear friend. So when you have to put a tag, please see what is the verb that has been used, are, and the tag will always be negative, because by putting negative we are getting a sort of confirmation. That is why we say people are happy, aren't they? Aren't they? Isn't it? Aren't they? Again, you are all enjoying my course, aren't you? Aren't you? So here also you will find we are using apostrophe, but please see that if the tag, if the verb here is affirmative, the tag will be negative. But if the auxiliary here is negative, the tag will be affirmative. You don't like me, do you? Fine. But there is one exception you have to see. Whenever you use I, for example, if I say I am teaching well, now here the auxiliary is am, but when I have to use tag, the rule says I have to use aren't I. I am teaching well, aren't I. So this is an exception that you have to remember. But if I say you have not enjoyed this course, and the tag will be have you. So this actually becomes, you know, this is very important when you are having a discussion amongst your friends and when you are having a sort of conversation. So please remember these tags. Then preposition, one of the most difficult, and most of us often create problems and often are mistaken in the use of preposition. Now you might be asking the question, how can we be an expert? We of course cannot be an expert in terms of using the prepositions, but at least we can practice a lot by going through good books on grammar. But then here I'll point out some of the uses of prepositions where people often are in dark, or they often feel that they are right but they are not. For example, I have heard many people saying I am senior than you. So please remember the words senior, junior, superior, inferior, all these will always take the preposition to and not then. Mr. Rathor is senior to me by 5 years, senior to me, fine. Again, there is another problem which people often come across in the use of since and for. So here also a point of caution, that whenever there is certainty, I mean when you know the exact time, for example, I have been teaching in this institute since 2007. Now when I say 2007, I am actually talking of a sort of certainty. But if I say he has been working for 4 years, now you do not know which 4 years. That is why it is called a point of time and a period of time. So whenever you feel that you are totally aware, you have to use, and you know such a thing will be only in present continuous or in any present perfect continuous. I have been teaching, he has been teaching since, and when you say since, you have to point out the specific time. That is, for example, if I say Mr. Deshmukh has been bedridden for the last 3 days, fine. Now you will find there are some more use of preposition which you should take into consideration, and you will find that at times it can be difficult. He found a poor boy sitting beside the driver, but sometimes people write besides. My dear friend, besides actually mean in, you know, addition to, but when you say beside means by the side. Besides teaching, I write books. So meaning is I not only teach but I also write books. The priest was absorbed in, absorbed will always take in the meditation when I reach the temple. Roorkee lies between Meerut and Haridwar. Now you see, when two objects are being shown a comparison, or when something is between two, so then you have to use between. And when we use beware, beware of insidious friends, beware of fraud friends. All of us must comply with the regulation, not to the regulation. This course will make you confident of your success in various spheres. Likewise you can see, and you know, a good grammar book will give you all these prepositions which if you find you have time enough, you can remember them and use them effectively. Now, is voice, anything can be said in two different voices, something in active, something in passive, and you know, when we use active voice, the verb comes just after the subject, but when you use passive, there is a change of order. For example, his long speech made no effect on the audience, made no effect on the audience. And if we say you are requested to submit the report by the weekend, now this is passive. Now, you know, when you are using a particular voice, you are attaching some meaning. You are advised to submit your report, again passive. But then if you want to say it in active, please submit your report, isn't it? The streets are swept every day. So somebody is sweeping the street every day. We expect good news, this is active, but we can use it in passive. Good news is expected, fine. So there are two voices, it depends totally upon you and depending upon the occasion which voice you are going to use. We have already discussed in our writing section how when you write something in passive the impact is less, when you write something in active the impact is more. And then comes transformation. Sometimes people also use sentences like, this hall is too small to accommodate 30 guests. The meaning is the hall is so small that it cannot. So whenever there is too, the meaning is negative. Can a leopard change its skin? Can a leopard change its skin? Now see, the sentence is an interrogative, but the meaning is negative. A leopard cannot change its skin. So you have been using all sorts of sentences in your day-to-day lives, my dear friend, and the meaning lies, as I have been saying, with you, the speaker, the user. The aeroplane flies faster than birds. What is the meaning? And it is a degree of comparison. Birds do not fly as fast as aeroplanes, isn't it? So you have to understand that these are some of the ways which, as an effective user, as an effective speaker, we have to take into consideration. At times you will also come across certain confusing words, and we have seen that people expect to use something whereas they use something else. For example, affect, effect. I hope my lectures have affected you. So when I say affected means impressed or have an impact, but when I say is there any effect of my lecture on you, so in the other instance it becomes a noun. We say formally, no, formally this course is going to close, my dear friend, but informally all of you are my friends, you can contact me any moment. So formally, I mean in a formal manner, but when you use formally also I tried to deliver lectures. Formally means on earlier occasions. So let us try to understand the change of meaning with the change of a particular word with a slight spelling change. For example, time and again you might have seen people making use of lose and lose. So when you use the word L-O-O-S-E, lose, that has a different meaning, and L-O-S-E, he is always afraid that he is going to lose his job. So L-O-S-E, lose his job. Fine. But when you are using L-O-O-S-E, means to make something loose. Please, I don't like loose talks. Fine. Again, stationery and stationery, most of the time people are confused. So whenever you are using stationery, you are, I mean the first stationery you are talking about place, but when you are using stationery you are talking about paper and other required things. You are using later, I'll talk to you later. Or when two things are being discussed, we say it comes later, isn't it? I expect you are going to send me lots of compliments, and your compliments are going to complement my self-confidence. A complimentary copy of the book has been dispatched. My dear friends, grammar is actually a sea. However hard you try, you can only be a drop in it. But then you should not lose your heart, because we are here to create some sort of effect on you by apprising you, so that you may make your own appraisal. You may also be in a position to offer compliments that can complement your working style. Life is not a desert. Life is full of desserts. So when I use desserts, I mean sweets. You see, an illicit relationship may cost, but an illicit, so when we use illicit and illicit, the first illicit is to seek response. No, I tried to elicit his response, but I later came to know that they were having a sort of illicit, I-double-L-I, illicit relationship. So this is how, every now and then, if you can continue trying, and if you can continue hammering yourself with grammar, hammer yourself with grammar in order to be correct. Dear friends, having said all this, as I said in the beginning, we are actually in the last leg of this series of lectures on soft skills. I do understand that you all have been listening to me and my lectures very patiently, and you might not have felt any boredom or ennui, but something that begins must come to a close, and this course also is going to come to a conclusion. We had begun well. Something that begins well is half done, and when I began well on a very optimistic note, I also had a sort of hope that it will end well, because we believe that with the amount of labor that I have put in this course, and with the amount of assistance that my fellow colleagues have rendered to me in order to make this course successful, I have deliberately spoken exhaustively on communication, on different phases of communication, whether it is by telephone or it by oral, written, and then whether it is to create an interest in your own personality by knowing your personal strengths and weaknesses, whether it is to understand how sometimes our words, even because of the best intentions, fail to create impact, and we create a sort of communication barriers. Barriers are there in lives and in organizations, but barriers can be improved, my dear friend. We also discussed how we can, during our jobs at our workplaces, have to write several sorts of letters, draft several sorts of reports, collect data, analyze them, and how at times we have to appear at interviews, at group discussions, and how we have to submit reports, how we have to show ourselves as a skillful leader, how we also have to give speeches for different occasions, and how finally we have to judge ourselves whether we have been able to create a sort of balance between our emotions and our intellect. The time has come to finish this course, and while completing this course, I feel a sort of satisfaction, but then this satisfaction will be true only when you are satisfied. The course is completed, and it will always be in a position that it can always respond to your queries, and I hope you will be answering my questions through quizzes, through tests, and feel yourself better than you were when you began this course. Ultimately, let me tell you all is well that ends well. Let me tell you goodbye. Let me also wish you to have a successful life. a successful career, a successful interview, and a successful experience, so that you can be joining the ranks of satisfied people who are going to enhance the image of their organizations that they are in. Thank you very much. I wish you all a very happy and enriching learning experience. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.